Hey guys, welcome to the Real SD podcast. I'm your host, Patrick O'Connor with Market Real Estate, and we meet with San Diego's most dynamic entrepreneurs, creatives, artists, and professionals to talk about our city, business, food, music, and what inspires us most. So join in and meet your neighbors. All right, so today I have my friend Ellyse Briand who's joining us, and her Instagram name is Culinary Gardener.
The Culinary Gardener.
The Culinary Gardener. And so I'll put that in the show notes stuff so you can link to it and find her afterwards. But she does all these really cool fermenting classes. And so it's some really neat stuff that I wanted to have her on and talk about. And I actually grew up with her, so I've known her my whole life, which is really fun. So she's been a friend forever.
Yeah.
And so the record today that we picked, we do a record of the day every day. And so she picked Bob Dylan, Blood on the Tracks.
Classic Bob Dylan.
It is. I love it. Simple Twist of Fate's probably like one of my favorite songs ever.
That's why I picked it.
So, cool. So tell us, so what's like, of course, everyone's in quarantine right now. So what's like daily life been like? What are you guys doing?
Well, so my little business called the Culinary Gardener had to be basically 100% shut down.
Yeah.
So I was doing events and like in-person workshops, so that's non-existent. So actually it didn't really change that much for me. I work for a nonprofit in National City, and so I've been still working there.
So you do both those things. So like your day-to-day stuff is working with the nonprofit company, and then you're also doing the Culinary Gardener where like people will hire you for events and like parties and like cooking, catering things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you'll go there and bring stuff, or do you like teach people on the spot?
No, so they're two separate things. So at the nonprofit, I'm a nutrition educator, so I teach adults how to cook more nutritious food with like ingredients that they have on hand, or like plant-based, or more like what people are interested in learning, like trying to use their CSA boxes or whatever they're doing. But that's like separate, but within that I still teach like fermentation and pickling and all those things. But like my business is separate from that, but
Yeah.
Same, but different. Like they're just two different parts of my life that sort of like mesh well.
Yeah, definitely. I could use nutrition advice. I had gelato for dinner last night, so.
We all do that.
Yeah. And so that was cool because you go like in person and go to some of these like events and stuff, and people would like you would bring supplies, and then people could kind of like do some of the fermenting stuff with you, like chop vegetables, and you tell them like what they're doing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so for the Culinary Gardener, my company, I have like sort of 3 different outlets. I'll have like workshops and like in-person classes. So I'll bring everything to the class. I'll have like a sauerkraut class. I'll bring all the materials, and I'll bring all of the like jars and the equipment and the food, and we'll all make it together, and everybody goes home with a jar, actually like this. It'll be exactly like this with like a little top and a weight. So everybody goes home with something. And then I also, in addition to that, do pickle parties, which is like a private home event. So you can hire me to come to your home and have like, instead of having maybe a housewarming party, we have a pickle party, and everybody makes something and learns and like drinks wine, and it's super fun.
Yeah, because people have like those like clothes swap parties, like all that kind of stuff. So it's like that, but you're actually like getting something out of it with like food.
Yeah, totally. Or just like girls' night, or like couples' night, if you just like something different. And people are super into pickles right now.
Yeah, and like fermenting and like kimchi and kombucha and all that kind of stuff. Like that's why I thought it'd be fun to talk about, because like I've been like drinking kombucha every day now for like the last couple months, and it's like it's one of the few things I feel like where there was like a physical difference. I feel like when I drink it every day, as opposed to like just getting up and drinking coffee every day, I kind of like substituted it for that, and it's like I can definitely tell it like makes me feel better. So it's like it's interesting, and that's like kind of general general public kind of like knows about all this kind of stuff more. And it's because like on Netflix, there's a lot of the cooking shows where they're talking about like fermenting and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, but like, what do you like, why do you think that kind of stuff is more popular now as opposed to in the past? What like,
I think that there's sort of a movement for people to like know their farmer, know where their food is coming from, like sort of go back to the roots. And there's people that are interested. I think we've lost a lot of the skills that we've previously had, like making our own food, being able to preserve our own food, being able to like use our hands to make things. So I think people are sort of searching for that, and that's coming out now, and people want to learn how to like relearn these skills. And so I think people are just also interested in like how to become healthier. Like there's so much research in other countries, especially like everybody eats like a pickled item with their meals. Like in the Middle East, they're always eating yogurt with their meals. Like people have been eating fermented foods for like generations and like for like throughout history. And we've sort of, especially in the West, especially in the US, have forgot that. And so I think it's super important to bring it back and then have like the conversation about like why it's healthy, like what are those microbes doing for our gut health? What is your gut health doing for the rest of your like holistic health? Like it's all connected. And so I think that people are just searching for that because it's such a missing piece. And we've just got so far away from it that it's, just something that people, like you said, you feel better.
Well, and it's a lot, I think it has a lot to do with like our rushed schedules. So people sort of back burner like the preparation of food, and it's because it has to be out of convenience to fit so much into your day and all that kind of stuff. So learning how to like meal prep or meal plan or like put more effort into the stuff that can then last you for like a week of cooking or something like that, that I think is like helpful. And like, especially right now, it's like people have food on their shelves that they don't know how to use. And we're like trying to limit our trips to the grocery store and try to figure out like how to make your food last more than 2 days before it spoils. And so.
For sure. And that's where like fermentation and pickling is like a really great skill, because for example, I had these carrots in my fridge for like a couple weeks, and carrots don't really go bad, but like they're starting to get soft, or they're starting to go like, you know, get floppy.
Yeah. Like the ones we get at the farmer's market, if we get them on Saturday, by Wednesday, they're like, you have to cook them because they start getting like rubbery, and then they're just like
floppy.
Yeah.
And so like using fermentation as a way to like preserve your food and then like save it for later and eat it later, and then also like make it more nutritious, I think is like a huge benefit, especially now when people are like actually in their kitchens doing things, and then bringing this skill out of this crazy time into like our real lives.
It's like people have time right now to learn something like that where they can learn, and then it becomes like a habit moving forward if it's something that you like doing and getting into. So like learning like the pieces of how to do it is like right now is a great time to figure all that stuff out. So and you were talking about like gut health and all that kind of stuff. So like what is like like some general benefits of this kind of stuff for like your gut health and your biome and all that kind of thing?
Sure. So I think also I'm going to like do a little teaching moment. A lot of people think that pickles, like any sort of pickle, is good for you. And like, yes, it can be. But when people are talking about like pickles that are good for your gut, they're talking about fermented foods and pickles. So if you're taking a pickle, like a pickle off the shelf that is
like Vlasic, like a jar of Vlasic pickles with like the stork on it or whatever.
I was trying to think of the like brand name. So like you take the jar off of the store and it's like canned, which means it's like completely dead of any sort of like good microbes, and in a like white vinegar that's like basically a cleaning solution. That's not like, it's not gonna like be not beneficial, but it's not what people are talking about when they're talking about like pickled foods and like fermented foods being like good for your gut microbiome. So when you have like fermented foods, those are foods that where like the microbes are breaking down sugars and proteins and creating lactic acid, and lactic acid is what's preserving your food, and the lactic acid is what the lactic acid is what's preserving your food, and then the microbes and like all of that like bacteria in there is what's good for your gut health and your microbiome. And there's like lots of studies showing that like the more gut flora and like different sorts of like microbes that are present is like beneficial for, I mean, like all sorts of things. Like your gut brain health has been like connected as something that like recently has been studied more. I mean, you're just going to have like better flow.
Yeah, well, there's like the digestive part of
digestion.
it. Yeah, like your
Yeah.
like your digestive part of it. But then there is also, like you're saying, like there's, I think you can think a little clearer sometimes. Like if you feel like you're eating better foods and you don't have like a bunch of junk that's clogging up your system,
For
it
sure.
helps with like your mental capacity too, like all that kind of stuff. So it's like I think it definitely has like dual benefits, like just good food and natural food, and then like you're saying, stuff that like feeds your gut bacteria better. It just has digestive and mental kind of.
Yep, you got like those enzymes in there that are helping break down food. But also with fermented foods, like if you were trying to find them at the store, there's a lot of people doing them at markets now. Like, I mean, we're not able to go to markets as much, but like ordering them online or being able to like, if you are at the store, just go to your cold section. Like usually like the live probiotic, like good for your gut pickles are in like the cold section.
Yeah. So don't get them off the warm shelf in the middle of the grocery store.
Right. Sauerkraut, kimchi. Yeah. Those types of like things that people are talking about more now. Those are like, that's where you're going to find them in your stores.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd say like it's this stuff. It can be like like an acquired taste. Like it's one of those things, like you might not always like it at first. Like for me, I didn't really like kombucha or kimchi at first. It was just like too like tangy, but it's also because I'd never had anything like that growing up. Right. So it's like one of those things you gotta like try with an open mind and like work into it a little bit, try it a little bit here and there, and it's like it grows on you.
Right. And like, or add them to certain recipes. Like I like to add sauerkraut to like especially salads or like burritos or like maybe add it to foods, like because I think a lot of times people think they have to eat it just plain,
just like
and
straight.
That's harder for people to like wrap their head around. Like that's a question I get all the time, like, well, how do I use all these things that I'm fermenting?
So like if you were making a salad for dinner tonight, like what would you would like chop up some lettuce and
like I would just make a regular salad, but then so like I have these beets here, my fermented beets that I made the other day. You can see the bubbles going.
Oh yeah, live and active.
So like the other night we had a stew, like a beef stew, and I put the pickles, like sort of chopped them up and sort of put them on top as like
a garnish.
That's the word. Like a garnish, or like with a salad, I'll use like maybe some of the brine even as like to make a vinaigrette, or
right on.
You can do like so many different things. Like with carrots, you can even use the carrot sticks with like your dips. You can use them the same way that you would fresh vegetables, but they're just like giving you so much extra nutrition. Yeah.
So you just like lay them out on a platter and like you could dip them in hummus, and it's basically the same thing. They just have like a little bit different flavor to them now.
Yeah, or chop them up and put them in your salad. That's what I like to do also. I like to put like all sorts of fermented foods in burritos, like just gives that like nice tang.
And then do you have to keep that stuff in the refrigerator, or when it's like that, you can basically like kind of keep it in the shelf or a pantry now?
So once you like, you'll ferment it on your counter, and once it's like to your liking, which you like it will become more sour over time. And so like when you feel like that, it's usually like 3 to 5 days for like more sugary, like beets, carrots, asparagus, cauliflower, things like that. Those are like 3 to 5 day ferments. And then like sauerkraut is like 2 weeks usually. Kimchi is usually like 7 days, like I like. But whenever you're finished with your ferment, you'll store it in your fridge, and then that's where you're preserving it. And then like the shelf life when it's in the fridge is like, it last longer than normal, or is it like still you should eat it within? No, you can. I like have some ferments like that I like better when they're like aged 6 months or so. You can definitely eat them like up to 3 months. I usually eat them before that, but like sauerkraut specifically, I like when it's like 6 months old. It's like the depth of flavor. All those microbes are still working. They're just slowed way down, so it doesn't stop fermentation completely. Just like the temperature slows it down enough to like preserve it for longer. Right on. That's cool.
And then let's go back. We'll get back to this stuff too. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about again that we kind of like touched on is like, so we grew up in Massachusetts, in Central Mass, and that's like tiny little town. Like there's a lot of farms there. It's like, you know, depending on where you grew up, you couldn't see your neighbors through the trees. So it's like a lot different than San Diego. But
Sure.
you got into doing like farming and stuff like that back there, right?
Right. Yeah. So after college, I moved to Seattle and then was there for 4 years, but I ended up moving home to Massachusetts where we grew up, and I did not think I was going to stay.
Yeah.
That was something that going back as an adult was like a completely different experience, but
Yeah.
I got a job in Petersham at that farm, and I just like completely fell in love with it. It's like so beautiful, so green.
Yeah.
Like when it's nice out, it's just, you know, it's beautiful there.
Yeah.
But so I started working on this farm, started growing food, and just like was like, that's it. I love doing this. It's calling.
And so you kind of handled the farm for the owner who wasn't on site, but they still wanted like a running, operable farm. So it was kind of like being like a caretaker there. And then,
pretty much.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then like you guys would sell to like local distributors and.
Yeah. So there was other employees there. So like, it was nice to have like a small working farm in a community that doesn't have a lot of opportunity for jobs. So like there was, you know, 5 or 6 of us that would like run the farm.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we would go to small markets. We would go to like have a little CSA where people came to the farm to pick up. Mostly it was like local people who knew the owners and would come and like get meat and syrup and all sorts of different things.
And so CSA, that stands for community supported agriculture or something, right?
Yeah. So for people who don't know what a CSA is, we have them here in San Diego as well. CSA basically is a way to support your farmer on the front side of the growing season usually. So like usually you pay up front for like however long the season is, 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks, however long. And a lot of times
we did one and it was like a quarter. So we had to pay in advance and basically we picked up every 2 weeks and it went for 3 months, I think. So, and so everything was like kind of seasonal based on like what that growing season was.
Yeah. And I think people are shifting the CSAs now too, where like you can pay weekly or you can pay monthly or you can pay upfront for the whole season, but it's just a way to support your farmer so that they're getting their money up front and or like they know that they're going to be supported while they're growing.
Well, and it's almost like a direct between grower and consumer too, which is great because then it's eliminating that middleman, that shipping, that like refrigeration time. It's kind of like, you know, they harvest or package whatever they're doing. They bring it direct to whatever the CSA point is. And then you, the end user, is like going right there to get it. So it's like as few touch points as possible really between like your food and your farmer. So. And
it's all seasonal. And sometimes you get to choose what's in it. Sometimes you don't. But I think that's like the exciting part of CSA sometimes because when you're learning to grow with, or you're learning to cook and eat things that like maybe you weren't familiar with or didn't even know you liked. Yeah. And then actually some of them deliver to your doorstep, which is pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so there's different models. But yeah. So anyway, we did things similar to that. Yeah. But the reason I got into like fermenting food and like experimenting with food is because a lot of times there's like, what I found, we would go to the market and we wouldn't sell everything that we had. And so we'd have to bring it back to the farm. And then based on like laws and like these ridiculous things that people don't understand, we can't resell the food, right? So then we'd have to take it home or give it to our friends or whatever. But then you have so much like seconds or leftovers. And then like, what do you do with this abundance of food? Yeah. So one way to preserve it, you know, like, lots of people lots of people ferment, lots of people freeze things. So fermenting for me was one of the ways that I just love it and love the flavors. And so then learning about it, that's how I started, which was like 2011, I think.
Yeah. And then like the fringe benefit is it's like, it's less waste. It's like less like surplus that just gets kind of discarded or whatever, or composted or something, right?
Right. Yeah. Like preserving all, like, yeah, like I said, like freezing it, we would like can it, we would ferment it, and like for sure that's a way to eliminate all that waste and also use what we're growing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That's a bummer to see it all go.
And then you guys also had llamas there, didn't you?
We did. We had a beef herd. We had sheep at one point, and we had the llama.
Didn't you? Yeah, you did have llamas, right? And you had to like
The llama,
you had to like herd them with a stick, right?
Yeah, the llama was there to protect the sheep and the goats. We also had goats.
Oh, right on. So how does that work? Like, what does the llama do?
The llama, they can be like super
It's like a sheepdog.
aggressive. Yeah, well, they'll like, so coyotes and stuff, they'll like spit at them and kick them. Like
Oh, no shit.
they're kind of intense. Like, have you ever been to those llama farms where they like spit at you?
Yeah, I guess they're known for that. Yeah.
They're like pretty
Territorial.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. And so when
yeah.
you just had to like move the herd around or something like that, they just kind of like walk around with them and hang out with them.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's
Instead of a guard dog, basically, it was a llama.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man. And then after that, like you were there for a couple of years doing that, and then you ended up back out in San Diego because like your sister lives here, and so it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I visited San Diego, met a guy.
That was
you're
it.
friends with.
Yeah. My best buddy Bo.
Best buddy Bo. He was sad that I got asked to be on here before he did.
He'll be my co-host for one of the next episodes. He's literally made for this, like just hanging out and chatting. So.
For sure. So yeah, I moved out here. It was 5 years ago now.
Yeah. I know. Time flies. So now you're here and you're doing this stuff, and so getting back to the Culinary Gardener, and we were talking about like some of your advice for like being more conscious and reducing impact, but like do you have like any other, like for someone who just wants to maybe get started now, like what would be some of like the really simple first things they could do to like eat better, or like maybe if they wanted to try this?
Well, I mean, like to speak to this like kind of weird time we're in, I think now is like probably the best time that you can support your local farmers, like figure out like maybe what is around you. Like I actually have a list. I don't know if you have links, but like I have a list of like my favorite farms, like from North County.
If you send those over to me, I'll put them like in the description and show note and stuff, because it'll have that and like how to sign up for because you do Zoom classes too. And we'll talk about that in a second for what those are. But yeah, but I think like, especially now, and you touched on it, like having a CSA, you're having like less touch points. You're not having to go to the store. You're not having to like sort of be unsafe. Like it's probably now like a safer way, but also like you're supporting these small businesses, supporting the farmers who are like making this, I mean, like putting their selves out there to like create this like nutritious, delicious food for us. So I would say like, as much as you can support your local farmers, like know where to get your produce and like that. But as far as find out
like
where your food's coming from, if you can, for like as much as possible.
And I think now it's like even easier, especially with social media. Even following your favorite restaurants, like sometimes your restaurants will link their farms that they're working with, or being able to like dig around on Facebook, even just to see like what sort of like what's happening around you, where your food is coming from, or like beverages. Like there's so many local companies doing like kombucha and like even hard kombucha, or just like so many people doing some cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, so you just kind of like start looking around, but like try to get into like knowing the local farmers basically is probably like the first thing, and going to the farmers markets. I think that's like the easiest, most accessible like starting point for a lot of people. So
right. And like now that we're home, just like try to do some of your own research, or like reach out. I mean, I'm on Instagram. Yeah. If you're not sure where to get something, or you want some recommendations, reach out to people who like maybe in the industry, or like maybe who have like some of that knowledge. Like I think that's a tool that we can utilize for sure with this. Like
last week we go to like this like farm, and they're like a butcher and that kind of stuff at the farmers market every weekend. So I started following them on social media, and they have a shop in Miramar, which I didn't know. So like, we can't do farmers markets right now. So we like go to Miramar to their shop and get it directly from them. But then they were telling us about like the other, like the people that we would get produce from, at like the 2 or 3 stands down or whatever. So they gave us their Instagram, and it's just like you can get in touch with these people if you just like kind of like reach
Right.
out and talk. So it's not like the
Right.
world is like cut off and shut down. It's just you got to
Exactly.
reach out and talk to people.
For sure. Exactly. There's a community of people who like do it for a
Yeah, yeah,
living.
and they all want to help each other too. So it's
Mhm.
like if they know that like the farm down the street, like they have a farm pickup stand or something like that. It's yeah. So
Definitely.
do you think like is San Diego like good about like helping small businesses and farmers and growers like that? Do you think is there like a good network or like good support for that type of stuff, or is it like a harder town to kind of like get a
Uh,
foothold and do that?
I think so. There's this like statistic that like San Diego has the most small farms per capita in like the
Mm,
US or something like that. But for me, moving from a small community that like was so ingrained in their like food system, and I was like, I guess like such a part of it, I think
yeah.
it was harder for me to find, it was hard to like figure out where to start. And so
Mm,
I think that's a good question that you asked, like how do people who don't know start?
mm,
Because for me it was like a little bit harder to like, it wasn't like obvious on the surface like where to
yeah.
go and like who to like network with and how to get like your fresh food. And like my favorite my favorite farms and like local producers of like mushrooms and other things like that, like I didn't start learning about them till like a couple years ago. And so it was more of like being in the industry myself and then like
Yeah.
networking through people, chefs that I know, like private chefs that I know, and like the Very Good Food Foundation, networking through like those sorts of places.
What's that
uh,
one called? The Very Good Food Foundation?
yeah, Very Good Food Foundation, they do a
Mm,
lot to support like small gardens and schools.
mm,
They also put on like large events that are pretty good for like fundraising events that like support that endeavor. Right
mm.
now because
Like
kids aren't in
education
school.
awareness about that stuff.
Yeah, they do like these like I don't remember what they call them, like think tank events or something, where
Mm,
they'll like highlight the ocean, or they'll highlight, they just did one on cannabis, they did one on like food as medicine.
mm,
And so
mm.
they like do these like, they'll have like a panel of people like in the industry that like are very well versed in it and then
Yeah.
support that. But they also right now are doing, they're making like tons of meals for people in the restaurant industry that like lost their jobs. And so
Yeah.
pretty cool, they're a pretty cool company, or a nonprofit also.
Yeah. That's cool.
But yeah, I think it's a little bit harder in San Diego. It's not like super, it's not one of those cities. I feel like I lived in Seattle, like it was more like in your face. People were like wanting
Hmm.
more of the fresh foods, and I mean that
Yeah.
big market in Seattle. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think more and more now it's starting to come out in San Diego and there's more interest. And so I think the ball is like rolling. I think it just took a little bit of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like even some of the more popular, like really big restaurants and stuff, like their chefs are like, they really source everything locally. And so that makes people who go to those places think like that as well. Like
Mhm.
um, Brian Malarkey's the guy from like Urban Wood and all that kind of stuff, and he
Mhm.
gets all of his stuff really locally, and like the fish is right at the dock, like right in
Yeah.
San Diego and stuff. So it's like then
Yeah,
people who go there, if they're eating that stuff, then they're thinking like, well, if I'm eating at home too, like where can I get my stuff, and
for
similar type of
sure.
thing. So
And there's been like a huge movement. That's like a really good thing for people to know. Maybe link. There's that Dockside Harbor Dockside Market or something like
yeah,
that
yeah,
on
yeah,
Sunday
yeah,
morning.
exactly, yeah.
That's like a pretty new thing. That's like really cool for the fishermen. Like we live
Hmm.
in a seaside
Yeah,
city, so like being able to source your fish locally, that's really cool. I really
yeah,
like that market, and people are
yeah.
doing like Slow Food has done a lot with them. Slow Food San Diego. My friend Christina does a lot with them. They're
Mm.
like really, yeah. I think it's starting to become more of like on people's radar, but for a long time, when I first got here, it felt harder to like break into the like local
Yeah.
food scene.
And it's also just like a busy city where there's like a lot of other stuff like fast food and stuff going on. So it's like a little bit of like noise and clutter that if it's just, you got to like go out of your way a little bit to start to like know people or something. So,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but,
Networking.
and then one of the other things we were just kind of talking about a little bit, but for example, social media, like how has that kind of impacted or helped you grow your own business and doing these events and sort of things?
Mm-hmm. It's actually been like hugely beneficial for me as a tool to like reach people.
Mm-hmm.
I started following like all of the people that I thought were doing cool things based on food and
Yeah.
wellness sort of in San Diego, and building sort of a network on there. And I've done like, so specifically with like this quarantine, I did my first like Zoom class, and
Yeah.
I did like a fermentation basics class last Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just, I only advertised on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure Instagram was like where I got most of the people from.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's definitely like a weird thing where like everybody's sort of like on it, and like there's definitely like you have to take it with a grain of salt. Like not everything is like a pretty picture of life, but I think businesses especially can use it as a tool for communication, which is what I'm trying to use it for, instead of like, here's my perfect life that is not achievable for most people.
Well, there's like definitely different layers of it where there's like the aesthetic and like the like modeling or whatever Instagram influencer side of it, and then there's also like business and networking and relationships. So it's like like for what you're saying, and same for me and my business, it's like you can pick up your phone and talk to your customers directly at any time, and they can interact and ask you questions about stuff. And it's like, that's like a layer of instant communication and relationships that you can get any other way. And it's like, that's like really breaks down the barrier for people to like learn and explore stuff. So I think that's like a super valuable part of it. And for you, that's like how you've like start kind of grown your business and get followers, and then that results in being able to do classes and like the in-person events before this. But now because of this, one of the things that you just started doing, like you said, this week was like an online Zoom class where people just show up, and then like what was like, how did you just give them a list of stuff that could be in their house, and they just kind of show up and start watching and doing it?
So it was more of like informational, but like versus hands-on. So I sent everybody who was interested, I sent them like an email with what recipes we were going to be making,
like ingredients list.
Not like I just wrote the like what I was going to be making, and then like some people took it upon themselves to like gather the ingredients if they had them, and one girl did it with me. She ended up having the ingredients, but it was more of like a informational
just like introductory learning.
And so what I did was like set my little station up, and I made the recipes as I went and talked about fermentation and what it was and how to like successfully do it, and that you don't need all this like fancy equipment. But basically how it worked was like I sent everybody interested a link. They all joined. It was donation based. So people who didn't like, who lost their jobs or don't have the income to support small businesses right now. We're fine. Like I want to be able to support those people, and they are free to join. And then people who do want to be able to support small businesses have the opportunity to like help me out, you know? So it was good for, I think it ended up working out well. And there was like 24 people in there at one point, which I thought was a pretty good turnout. And
that's amazing.
And then some people donated and some people didn't, which was totally fine. And people were stoked about it, and then asked if, what the next one was. So the next one will be kimchi this Saturday.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So the first one, did you just like talk about like pickling, like the vegetables and stuff you have on the table there? Like, was there a certain thing?
So it was, I did like a fermentation basic. So I focused on like salt brining. So like here we have some beets. And so we made, I just taught people how to make like a percentage salt brine. So like
what is that right there? Like, let's break that down.
So this right here is orange cumin beets. So we made a 5% salt brine, which I showed them how to do, like how to calculate a salt brine, but basically it's like 3 tablespoons to 1 quart of water is about a 5% salt brine. So we made the salt brine.
So that's literally just water, salt, and like cumin and some spices.
Yep. Yeah. So water, So salt is like your number one ingredient in fermentation.
Hmm.
Like
For
sea
some reason, I
salt,
always think of like vinegar.
that's before when I said there's like two things. There's like pickles.
Hmm.
What is the saying? all all fermented foods are pickled, but not all.
Pickled foods are fermented.
Yes.
Oh,
There
okay,
it is.
okay.
Yeah. So vinegar pickles
Uh-huh.
are pickles, but they're not fermented, and those
Okay.
are, you can still like preserve your food in that way. So
Uh-huh.
what you're doing is like using vinegar is a acetic acid, and that's preserving your food. The
Hmm.
microbes make a lactic acid, and that's what's preserving your food here. So they're both
Okay.
pickled. They're
Yeah.
both preserved in an acid, and that's what like where the confusion comes from.
Gotcha. Okay. But so that's basically just salt, some water, and some spices, and then the
And then
beets.
our beets.
Yeah.
Yep. And we let this ferment for 3 to 5 days, and then you can see. I mean, the bubbles is my favorite part.
Yeah.
Can you see?
That's
Check.
awesome. Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely like you can see the bubbles up here.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
alive and fermenting well, and it's pretty much almost done.
Yeah.
And they'll have that tang like you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
That like lactic acid
Hmm.
will be like a sour tang, and
Yeah.
then they'll
And
be
now
ready.
yours has like a special lid on it. Do you need that? Could you just do a regular mason jar, or
You
if
can do
you
a regular
reuse
mason
like
jar.
an old pickle jar or something like that, you can.
So like the whole class I did like talks about like all the steps that go into it, but
Yeah.
basically the three things are like salt, keeping everything under the brine, and the right temperature and
Hmm.
time. So
Yeah.
really like four things. So
Yeah.
you want to like, you don't like, my like whole thing is you don't need fancy equipment. You don't need
Yeah.
like any sort of, don't need anything besides jars to start fermenting, because what you can do, like, so this one doesn't have anything in it, but I packed everything so tight that
Yeah.
like you can actually hear it. Did you hear it?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost just because like the liquid goes all the way up to the top, so it's like liquid sealed.
Yes. So
Yeah.
basically you want everything under the brine, because if anything's popping out out of the brine,
Mm.
oxygen hits that, and that's where you have like you can start growing molds or yeast or
Yeah.
things like aren't great for a ferment. So
Gotcha.
everything under the brine is super important. But this one doesn't have that, and so
Mhm.
I asked if you could hear it because it like sizzled like
Yeah.
letting the CO2 out. So basically what I
Yeah.
did was burp the jar, and then like the CO2 is released.
Yeah.
But
Right
you
on.
don't have I have something right here. Like if you don't have this fancy equipment, you just use a jar inside another
Yeah.
jar as a weight. Like you don't need any sort of equipment to
Yeah.
be able to start fermenting at home. But
That's
I also
awesome.
recorded that class, so if anybody's interested and wants the link, I can shoot it over.
Yeah. Yeah. And then so this weekend you're going to be doing
Kimchi.
kimchi. Awesome. And so what is kimchi? It's cabbage.
Yeah, so kimchi is like a Korean style sauerkraut. Basically, it's like
Uh-huh.
you use like traditionally you use what is that cabbage called? Napa.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Traditionally, you use Napa cabbage and daikon, and like you can add carrots. You can kimchi anything really.
Yeah.
There's like 100 different varieties of like traditional kimchi in Korea.
Mhm.
And
So is kimchi
like,
just a spice, and it's just everybody thinks it's because cabbage is like the most common like base ingredient, but is kimchi just like the actual like spice makeup of it, or?
yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So it's like traditionally like using Napa cabbage, and then there's this stuff. I think we're in my fermentation corner. It's called gochugaru. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Gochugaru, that's like the main kimchi spice, but you can have like white kimchi, you can have like kimchi that has like not like doesn't have that flavor. I think basically what it is like fermented Napa cabbage, and at its like core is like the traditional Korean way to ferment, whereas like sauerkraut is like the like
German.
Yeah, Eastern European way to.
But it's basically the same thing. It's like cabbage is like the base like vegetable that it like pretty much is, right? Yeah.
Yep, and then you like process it in a certain way and let it ferment on your counter, and then you have kimchi.
That's awesome. So this Saturday, kimchi. Like what kind of stuff would people need?
So if they wanted to do it with me, I'm going to show a recipe like Napa cabbage. I'll have like use carrots, daikon. But so for these classes, I really want to highlight that people don't have to go to the store specifically to like make any sort of ferment. So like whatever you had in your house. So if you had some radishes, if you had like regular style green cabbage, if you had carrots,
yeah, because we have like
even kimchi,
some carrots and some beets that are almost bad. So like we would
so
like
it's pretty much like you make a paste and then you put the paste, like you soak your vegetables in a salt water, which is different from other ferments. Then you put the paste on and then you ferment it. And so basically you can kimchi whatever vegetables are in your fridge at the time. And that's what I want to highlight with these classes is that like, I don't want people to make special trips to the store right now if they don't have to, or if they get a CSA box, like what can you use in your CSA box to be able to ferment? Like you can ferment any of your vegetables in there. Especially now where we're getting like lots of carrots, lots of like the cabbages are like our spring cabbages are coming out here in San Diego. We have like root crops like transitioning out into like summer crops. So we're getting all those really nice things right now to start fermenting.
Yeah, awesome. So that's Saturday?
Saturday, 10 a.m.
Saturday, 10 a.m. and it's a Zoom meeting. So they would go to your Instagram, which is at the Culinary Gardener. And then from there, they just like, there's a link or they would just like reach out and direct message you or something.
So yeah, they can. So what I did last week was people either sent me a DM with their email. Yeah. And I sent them the link directly. But then Saturday morning, I put the link up on my email, on my Instagram handle. Yeah. I don't know if anybody used that, but I put the link up where like my website would be. Yeah. Yeah. So you can get it that way, or you can, if you send me your email and I know that you're in the class, then I send like a handout to you after the class, like with the whole recipe and like some tips and tricks. And like, I actually linked a bunch of the farms. People had questions about where I got my, like sourced my produce. So I like had a bunch of those links.
Awesome. Well, I'll get all that stuff after, so then I can put it in like the little description and show notes, so then people can like check it out and reach out and all that kind of stuff. So awesome. Sure. Well, is there anything else going on? That's about it. Just getting through quarantine. Yeah. What are you doing? Like reading books, watching Netflix, Tiger King?
We did start watching Tiger King. It's hard to get into, actually. I think I have to keep going.
That's why like everyone's watching it, because like on the one side, this guy's like this insane like train wreck that you can't stop watching, but then it's like also there's like the animals and stuff, and you're like, who's like actually taking care of it? Like, because the other lady, Carol, that everyone talks about, it's like she's also making money off of tigers, right? And tigers, and it's like such a polarizing show. Yeah, exactly.
I know, it's so insane. So no, I did start watching it, but haven't finished. But you know what I did do, which is awesome, and that Vote has been really great at helping out with, and mostly did. We ripped out all of our non-edible plants and we're creating a whole edible garden on our back patio.
Oh yeah, so you guys have like kind of like a planter bed that's pretty much already like a raised planter bed around your whole kind of like backyard. Yeah. And yeah, so you guys were like turning the soil and getting it all ready and everything.
Yeah, so it was like super overgrown with like all of these ferns and like tons of huge succulents. I had like 2 palm trees that were dead from that disease. Like it just was like neglected. Useless. And useless. And I've been like, I had this dream for so long to like make it a edible garden, like an urban sort of like edible oasis. And so we did it. We took out all, like, it was my birthday a couple weeks ago in quarantine. And everyone was like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to make my roommate's garden with me. And so it was awesome.
My favorite part was like, so you guys were doing that. And then we have like a group text with like a bunch of our other friends and couples. And because none of us can see each other, obviously. So we're doing this thing where it's like, you like see a chug and you send a chug. So everybody's like filming a video of like how you're like chugging a beer with your family. And like we had like this group text of it. And so yours was, Abby, your sister, is following you along your little garden and you're picking all your carrots. And like at the end of it, there's this bucket and you're like, what's under this one? And you pull it, you lift the bucket and boats underneath it. It's hilarious.
You pull the last carrot out.
It was like perfectly buried under the dirt and you had like no idea until the very end of it.
It was a pretty good one. Yeah. So we were able to do that because we took all the soil out, took all of the plants out. And that was his brilliant idea. He was like, I think I can fit.
It was definitely one of the
hopefully
best
on this
ones.
podcast, your
That and
fans will be
our other friend, the Trues, they have like their backyard is like all their kids like obstacle course, and like True is not an athletic guy by any means, and like watching him crawl through his kid's toy set, like he did it like a Mission Impossible like movie trailer, how it was edited. It's hilarious.
great.
But anyway,
We've been doing
one thing.
Stuff like that. The Quarantine
Cool.
Queen came out that day too. That was pretty good.
What is it?
My sister did the Quarantine Queen
What is it?
karaoke video. You didn't see that?
No, I don't think I saw it. Half of the videos on that group chat didn't come through for some reason, so I got like part of them, but you'll have to send it to me. Yeah.
That was a good one. But so yeah, it's pretty much ready for planting, which is exciting. And
and that's another activity some people, if they have a yard, can try to do right now, like even a raised planter bed if you have like a little patio. Or
I've like filmed the whole thing, so someday in my life I maybe will edit it, put it somewhere on social media.
Yeah. iMovie, you get iMovie for free if you have an iPhone, so it's on there.
Also like simple. A plug for my other company. I want to try it. I just haven't yet. iMovie.
Yeah.
A plug for my like other Olivewood Gardens in National City. They're super great. That's the nonprofit I work for. They do we're doing like all sorts of videos for them. So I'm showing like how to make dry beans. My like coworker is showing how to like use your scraps to make veggie stock. We're just doing all sorts of videos, so you can follow that on YouTube, just to get inspiration in the kitchen. And they also do pay what you can, donation based, like I guess like we give out bags of produce on Thursday mornings at 10 a.m. So if you can't afford to get food, or like if you're looking for somewhere to like, or just like hard times, whatever, come to Olivewood Gardens on Thursday morning and get a bag of produce.
Awesome. And you said that's in National City?
National City.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Anybody can come. You don't have to be a resident of National City.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, cool. So I'll get the information for that and put it in the show notes too. So.
Yeah, but so the videos too are fun, and also I love puzzling, so I've been puzzling
like jigsaw puzzles.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just been trying to like read some books and do stuff like this, like with my idle time. So I get like these projects that have been like things on my back burner, like that I've wanted to do that just haven't I haven't had the time to like push myself to do them. And now it's like I've got no excuse. We've got like, there's still work going on, but it's like you have time to like try and do some of those things you're interested in. So.
Right, for sure, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, I think that's it. Any last anything to add?
No. At the end of this, hopefully we can go back to our pickle parties. And,
in person. That's the
person. They're super fun, much more enjoyable than. I mean, actually doing the online class was funner than I thought it was going to be, but we'll
have one at my house for our friend group, so then we can all like see each other and like blow off steam, since we've all been isolated for so long.
Yeah, for sure. But no, it's all good. If anybody has any questions or wants to reach out to me on Insta.
Perfect. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you. Really fun to chat.
Yeah. Thanks
for having me. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.